Sir Keiff and Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Remember, both are Knights of the Realm, which demonstrates that they have, shall we say, service, dedication, and ability, supposedly, and all the rest of it. Got into a bit of trouble last night, didn't they? The opposition parties have different days, a number of days, where they can table a motion as for their policy position that can be voted for or against. And governments have unlimited days, essentially, and they can intervene with opposition motions. They can table their own amendments against an opposition's motion. So last night, the SNP tabled a motion on one of their three opposition days in the year. Of all the topics they could have chosen to talk about, could be fuel prices, could be cost of living, could be unemployment, or whatever else, welfare reform, you name it. They chose Gaza to virtue signal. But that's by the by. They have their right to choose what it is they, to table a motion or what it is they think needs to be discussed. So they chose that. And the government then tabled a different motion rather than amendment, as they can. The SNP, as the third largest party, they get 3 days a year. The main opposition party, Labour, this is, they get 17 days a year for their motions. And what doesn't happen, or shouldn't happen by convention, is that on the third party's day, this is the SNP's, used to be the Lib Dems, obviously, before 2019, the SNP, on their 3 days, the Labour Party isn't, the second party, that is, shouldn't table their own amendment. It should only be the third party and the government if it sees fit to, if it decides to. It doesn't need to, and they don't always, but they can. And the government did. But Labour, as a second party, they shouldn't. But what Keiff did, he toddled, by the looks of it, if all the sources are correct, he toddled off to Lindsay Hoyle's office and told him that, look, unless you give me an amendment, the opportunity to table our own amendment on the SNP's motion tonight, my MPs are going to come into a lot of danger. They face a lot of danger from the protesters. The free plasticine protesters outside. He didn't call them that, obviously, but that's who they were. Calling for displaying from the river to the sea on the Elizabeth Tower clock tower, so you can see what it did, the eradication of Israel. That was going on outside. The usual suspect of the certain demographic and the Marxist hangers-on. The very people that Labour are getting into a bit of a spot of bother about. The very people who present a danger. David Ames, as we saw, and Mike Freer having to stand down. This is the threat that they face, and this same large group of people, or these are same organisations, you should say, in the same ideologies. They are outside Parliament, such that MPs felt frightened, and so Keiff had to ask, it appears, had to ask Lindsay Hoyle for the Labour amendments to go through, so that Labour MPs could have something to be seen. Labour could be seen to have done something, or with their own amendment, and it was allowed, contrary to convention. Lindsay Hoyle is written to by one of the clerks saying that you really shouldn't be doing this. He overruled the clerk, and it went ahead. Except it didn't. It has turned out to be a complete farce. The SNP's motion didn't go ahead. Neither did the government's. I think both of them withdrew it. The Labour motion, amendment, that went through on the nod. The MPs didn't go into the division lobbies. Yeas and nays. Sorry, I've just been swimming. So instead of MPs going to the division lobbies to count how many MPs support which motion, that amendment, and to see who voted for what, or which way, I should say, it went through on the nod. In other words, he just took a look around the Commons, see how many hands went up on if do you support or do you not support, and it went through on the nod. That way, there's no record of who voted for it and who voted didn't. So it's nothing. There's nothing. There will be nothing in Hansard. There'll be nothing in any of the records you can find online, voting records, to see what MPs voted which way for what motion or amendment or bill or whatever else. There's nothing. And certain MPs, Labour MPs, are infuriated about that because it means that they can't go out to the electorate and say, look, we voted for this. See, we tried to help you. We tried to stop Israel. Look, we voted. We tried to stop this the ceasefire. Look, we virtue signaling. We want the M vote. Look how good we are. They didn't get that. So now, because they can't prove their voting record for that, they now come under that threat of being hurt, shall we say, in a nasty way, as in needing stab vests and not fancying their offices set on fire from a certain demographic, and so on. So they're not happy. But the particularly telling thing is what Lindsay Hoyle said in his apology very shortly afterwards. A cup of tea. What Lindsay Hoyle said in his farcical apology afterwards, that the reason why he let Labour put their amendment in was he didn't want to see MPs, of which he had a responsibility over, to face danger or come to harm. I think "come to harm" was the word he used. So it was because of the threat outside. It was because of that threat outside Parliament from the usual suspects that he went against convention and he allowed those MPs. They allowed the Labour amendment to go through against the convention, purely to give them fire cover, I should say, so that they weren't seen. They could be seen to have virtue signalled in the correct way to appease. This is where we're at. This is how the politics of Pakistan works: intimidation and threats and assassination. If a certain demographic or factions of a certain demographic don't get their own way, it's mob rule. It's worse than mob rule. It's factional, it's sectarian. It shouldn't happen, but it is. I've been warning you, and many other people have been warning as well over the years. It shouldn't happen like this, but it means that essentially parliamentary democracy is completely kaput. On certainly this topic and any other else which come to the ire of a certain demographic and their Marxist hangers-on. So, and all the parties in Westminster, they're all complicit. So they're all terrified of leaving last night because they're having to go through these people. The concept of pitchfork lengths. Again, it isn't that the people hold the pitchforks against politicians. It's that the politicians hold the pitchforks against the people. And in this case, the more discord, shall we say, between the politicians and the public, the greater the number of pitchforks are needed by the politicians, because they aren't of us, because of the disconnect between us us and them, I have to say, because we can only rule as an MP or any government as well if over a fairly united kingdom, united country, which the UK supposedly is. It isn't, but that's the theory of parliamentary democracy. That falls apart when we are as hopelessly as divided as this. When you have a substantial fifth column outside Parliament, as we saw last night, as we've seen every weekend since October the 7th. You can't. So you end up with politicians increasingly divorced from and isolated from the public. And last night, it probably would have needed about six pitchforks that they would have. So they felt that they had to. They were frightened to leave the chamber. Well, I don't want to see any of them come to harm. It's quite difficult to feel sympathy for any of them in the Unit Party. Their ideology, their common ideology, is coming back to bite them on the backside. They are now facing the consequences of both their actions and their inactions, of failing to tackle this issue head on. They should have, but obviously they haven't. They don't understand what the problem is, so they won't. Again, Batley, a grammar school teacher, he's still in hiding. Is it 3 years on now? Because he showed a painting of a certain man from olden times, which certain people in his community didn't like and tried to end his life, and he threatened to end his family's life. So he's now in police protection for trying to talk about and show a picture of a man from several centuries ago, courtesy of an ideology which hasn't been stood up to and told, as Bild has told them, the 50 things of what it means to live in Germany. We haven't done that here because nobody's got the backbone to do the same. And those who have tried to challenge an orthodoxy have ended up damaged. I'm thinking of Salman Rushdie here. Yeah, he's lucky to get away with his life, wasn't he? So that's what you're up against. And for any politician who has failed to stand up to that and make really they're coming to face with the reality of coming to face with the consequences of having failed to tackle this. Oh well, but the parliamentary democracy is pretty much kaput, and the power battles don't lie in the chamber anymore. They lie out in the streets. It's only a matter of time before there are counter groups to go up against what you saw outside Parliament last night. They're not really formed as a cohesive group. There isn't anything much, but it's only a matter of time before there is something, before people finally do give up and say we have to do this ourselves, because you can't rely on any political party to. And that's what it's going to come to. What do they say about be the change you want to see? There are different ways of tackling various societal issues. Yes, within the realm of politics, be the change you want to see, and that is in getting involved. So, which is why I do get involved in the realm of politics, in the realm of groups, established groups, and so I am doing my part in being part of the change, and part of that takes place on Saturday in Shrewsbury. Will Fawr.